I've got good news for you. There's evidence that the populist movement, engaged citizens and patriots rising up, are having a definitive impact upon the direction of America. It's as though there's an awakening that's already being manifest, that it's coming along in a spiritual form at one level, and there's a reformation happening at another level. There's been a breakthrough in the way that Arizona has been restructured to more equitably represent Republican voting so that it isn't skewed to the Democrats' advantage. Somebody, a private citizen, rose up and put the elbow grease in and changed it. The same thing is happening in Tarrant County, Texas, where the school system is being turned around and reversed because of one mother's engagement. This is the hour of the individual. It's the hour for you. You don't want to miss this broadcast. I've been looking forward to seeing you, all of you that are out there watching and all of you that are tuning in from various platforms. We appreciate every one of you. You're the enlightened warriors of this new awakening, the Great Awakening, something that is already in the air. I want to talk about it today, but we thank you for being part of this massive movement. It's a populist movement. I believe it's Christian populism. It's a whole new species, and we're going to be talking about that right now. Thanks for joining us. And Mercedes, welcome today.
Thanks for having me, Lance. I got to say something, though.
What?
You didn't start the show how Chelsea says you normally start the show. She told me earlier she's going to make a mug in the back, and it's going to have like the Lance Wallnau Show, and on the other side, it's going to say, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. And she said the whole control room, every time the show starts, go, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, because that's how you start the shows.
I was not aware that I do it with oh boy, oh boy,
I didn't know that either. I was like, really? She's like, seriously? You've never noticed that? I was
well, that's because I didn't hear the sound intro. Maybe if I wasn't listening to it today. So look. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. This is going to be hot today. I want to talk to you about what's happening. I'm looking at all this material we have here. This is what you call the stack of stuff that's going on. But my mission is to connect the dots, really, to try to find out how this mosaic of activity actually works together. Because coming at this from an enlightened warrior perspective. Notice the word I used, enlightened warrior, today, because you see, anyone could be like an activist or an agitant, but to be an enlightened warrior is somebody who actually knows what it is that you're dealing with, what you're up against. This is a moment of profound spiritual warfare in the United States. Those that are on the ground, that are just working within, they're dealing with some political or school or marketplace or the border. You see all the fronts of this thing, and it's really an unraveling that's happening in the United States because of different views of how reality is, what reality is. I mean, you got a Supreme Court candidate who can't even say what a woman is. You got this news this week, which will never go down well, that you've got 2 women pregnant in a women's prison because transgender men, surprise, surprise, actually function physically like men and can have sex. Well, so then the transgender is in their head. It's their identity in their mind. They say they're women, but the government accommodates this. If you say you're a woman, I guess you're a woman. Trust me, if that trend continues, you're going to see a whole lot of transgender transformation going on in the American criminal system, just so the men can go hang out with the women in their prison. And so something is so off that even a person who is observing this thing objectively and saying, well, something does seem a little bit strange there. Yeah, no kidding. It's a little bit strange. And the problem is there's no resistance. The firewall doesn't exist. When this show started, originally, I called it the firewall because I thought firewall is really what we have to be. And that's where this culture and economics and society is unraveling. It's got to hit a resistance. That resistance represents us. But it's a spiritual thing because lawlessness is a spiritual force, in the same way that righteousness is a spiritual force. But we have such confusion over these issues. There is there's no agreed to definition. Listen, if you can't agree on what a man and a woman is, you can't agree on what right and wrong is. You can't agree on what true and false is. So when the media can be labeled with fake news as ubiquitously as it's been referred to by Trump and by so many of us, and yet they're going along. Did you ever listen to the news? You ever listen to Brian Stelter or these guys? Jen Psaki. They actually live in their own. It's like a Facebook metaverse. They live in their own world where their reference points for everything is skewed, so that Jen Psaki, I heard she was in tears the other day at a press conference meeting, just agonizing over the injustice of not letting teachers teach sons and daughters from kindergarten to third grade about gay and transgender lifestyle issues. I mean, this is bizarre. And this is right at the highest helm of government. This is like a form of mental illness at a national pandemic level that no masks can stop. Yeah. So, when I'm saying that, I'm saying connecting the dots for me is it's not just, well, these are the progressives, these are the Democrats. It's bigger than that, folks. It's so much bigger than that. I talked today to a small group of strategists who were looking at the redistricting, for instance, in the United States. And this is a big deal. You say when elections come around, you get a little bit excited. You ought to, about whether or not you're going to put in a lunatic like the guy's DA in L.A. who has people that are killing people and they're out in bail over the weekend because the guy is a Soros-funded anarchist, basically. He just let, I want to know what happened to all the prisoners that were released during the COVID lockdown. Remember that one? These guys say, hey, release the prisons, let them out. You can't let them stay in there. They're likely to get COVID and endanger themselves. Well, they're in prison because they endanger everybody else. So this redistricting thing is interesting. So in the swing states, which we're learning, we're all getting educated in this stuff. We've got Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia now, and Arizona. Well, in the swing states, what determines the who gets elected is the candidates, who's running. But who's running for a district is really shaped by how the district is defined. So every 10 years, states get to redefine the map. Now, if you redefine the map so that it is Democrat territory and 30% of the Republican territory next door, you've just neutralized 30% of the Republican vote in that other territory because the Democrats are going to dominate this area here. And instead of having it so that you've got, oh, look, there's one more seat here for Republicans, or there's one more, or it's a smaller area for Democrats, instead of having it actually reflect the numbers of people within a certain area, what you have is neglect. The Republican National Committee, I don't know what the heck they do. They sit on $80 million. You'd think that they'd be interested in the Republican Party. And so if you've got Republican Party, you want to take a look at the districting. Well, here's what these guys found out. I talked to an entrepreneur today. He said, man, I'm a guy that works in finances, but I was saying, who's in charge of the redistricting? Because the Democrats are wiping us out. They're taking away seats from Republicans and multiplying the map, making the map so they can get more seats in Congress or in legislators, the Senate, state Senate, for Democrats. And I said, well, how do you stop that? He says, you get involved. He said, so I basically said, as a businessman, I stopped. And I said, what's going on in Arizona? Now, here's the point. He got involved. He could only do one state. And it was at the last minute at that, because nobody else was doing it. And he got involved. And he said he pushed back on the way they were going to redo the map, which would be taking away Republican seats and multiplying Democrat seats. And he pushed back, and he actually gained 3 Republican seats for the Senate. And I think there was a redefinition even in how the districts were lined up for congressional races, which means, he said to me, Arizona will never go blue again. We've actually, for the next 10 years, we've got the map done right. My gosh. And I said to him, I stopped the meeting because I was so stunned by this. And I said, you're telling me that, I said, how much does it cost to do that? He said, well, it costs about $500,000. He said, now look at these races. Could be multiple millions of dollars to get a guy elected, but it was $500,000 to get the map done so that Republicans weren't going to be beaten by the map manipulation. Well, it just makes you stop and realize that all across the fruited plain, school boards, I had a lady there in this meeting today who was talking about school boards. Tarrant County, she represents Tarrant County in Texas. So you look at where's the strategic point. In Texas, if Tarrant County goes blue, it's such a large and strong county that it throws off the whole map for Texas. It's possible that Tarrant County completely flipping could flip Texas. So you're going to this choke point, and just a mom. And she said, I got involved with looking at 120 pages of the curriculum coming into the school systems in like South Lake and Grapevine and like in Tarrant County. And she goes through, nobody else was doing it. She went through 120 pages riddled with critical race theory poison, which basically has the kids getting trained in identifying themselves solely by race and then finding fault with you if you are white. And so she's saying that's the curriculum that's coming into this conservative city, South Lake in Tarrant County. So she exposed the curriculum. She went out and started showing people what their kids are about to sign off on. As a result, she said, we got to go to the school board meetings. So they went to the school board meetings. And I'll tell you, when we come back, what happened. But here's the hint, that by one mom educating parents, they had 3,000 parents get involved with education in Tarrant County. They were looking for like 30 or 40. They ended up with 3,000. And as a result, they brought a massive shift. Now, she started getting hate mail. She started getting, her children were getting these obscene pictures of their mother with a knife in her neck. They started driving by her house with megaphones, shouting obscenities and being accusing her of being a racist. And she said, you know what? You just have to accept the fact that and she's a Christian, that once you get involved with where the demonic activity is, and you're moving with honesty, openness, and with actual Christian integrity, they're going to do that to you, but that's how you know you're dealing with evil, and that's how you know you're hitting the target. When we come back, we're going to talk about this because they flipped the county. I wrote a book, and I talked about Haggai, the prophet, talking about God is going to shake all the nations, including economic systems. And then just recently, I got challenged by a verse. It says, the silver is mine and the gold is mine. And I began to think, you know what? I'd hate to find out there was a promise and a warning here on silver and gold, and I never even thought about it. And that's the reason why I want you guys to do something right now. You want to get a 20-page special report on silver and gold. Go to lancewallnau.com/Birch, because Birch Gold is one organization that is being used by a lot of very credible people right now in order to position themselves with silver and with gold. You need to now start to look into this and learn what it is that maybe God was trying to say, that the silver is mine and the gold is mine. Go to lancewallnau.com/Birch and find out for yourself. Being able to see these things, to be able to see that we're trying to create a world that works for everyone and leaves no one out. And during the commercial break, my own staff was saying, well, are you saying that, it's good that, the Republicans were able to manipulate the geography so they win? No. So let me clarify what I said or what I was trying to say. You need to have supervision of how the gerrymandering or the structuring of these counties is done, because if you turn it over to the Democrats to do and you don't watch, it will be like the curriculum you're turning over to the teachers from the National Education Association and the unions, which have a political ideology. And when you look at the liberals of TikTok, is that what it is? The liberals of TikTok? I think that's the site that has been controversial lately, because all that it is just liberals in their own words saying what they're saying. And okay, so you got to look at that, and you say, well, and suddenly Media Matters and all these other leftist organizations freak out because it's so damaging to them, and the only damage is it's them being quoted. And so they can't, because their most extreme elements are the ones that are being quoted. I could tell you, there's leftist organizations that do the same thing, and they just take the most extremist, incendiary comments they get from Christian preachers, and they put it out. But it falls on flat ears, because no matter how bad we may be, there's nothing that compares to the madness of what you've got on the left, because these are the teachers saying, "Here's what I teach my students." So we're just preaching to ourselves, but they're talking to your children. So to make it real clear, what these guys did in Arizona was they worked the map so that it accurately reflected the population, instead of it being manipulated so as to be a disadvantage for conservative voters. When you have a nation that is largely center-right, but you have a government that is dominated by the 25% that are extreme left, you have a map that is dysfunctional, because you're not seeing the representative will of the people through their representatives. If they can remove a candidate because they don't like their politics, you've lost democracy. So one of the segments I was going to play, but I don't think Chelsea got it. I don't know if you gave it to her, Jonathan, but I had a segment from Tucker talking to Marjorie Taylor Greene about how the progressives are trying to take her off the ballot because she represents a Republican county that wants her in Congress, just like Ilmar and Ocasio-Cortez. If the Republicans would go after them and say, well, they shouldn't even be running for office because they say stupid stuff. Their argument with Marjorie Taylor Greene is she says the treatment of the January 6th people that did not have weapons, did not commit acts of violence, and are still held in like terrorist cells with 2 hours of daylight a day and solitary confinement is a crime. You've got these liberal guys that are letting people walk off the street after they shoot people, and then they're back out on bail. When you have a criminal system that criminalizes the politics of their enemy and locks them up, or when you have a system where the left can remove candidates because they don't like their thinking about January 6th, well, you've lost democracy. But that's the spirit of lawlessness we're up against. It's not like a dynamic equilibrium here where, well, both sides do it. That's ignorance. It's not a both sides do it. Well, the criminals are as bad as the law enforcement. No. The law enforcement is not as bad as the criminals. But this is the narrative that's out there. So when the narrative's out there, it's no wonder. It's what Rush used to call low information voters. It's that they vote based upon the manipulation of their emotions in a news cycle. It's like the Don't Say Gay bill. There's nothing about gay. Don't say gay. They didn't say gay. It has nothing about gay specifically being targeted. It has to do with the authority of a teacher to intrude into the domain of a parent when it comes to shaping their child's understanding of certain fundamental things at an early age regarding sex and identity. That's what it's about. But they're branding experts, because I'm telling you, you're dealing with a spiritual force. That's where I was starting from. What we're up against is a spiritual battle. And because it's a spiritual battle, we're going to have to look at the natural and the spiritual weapons which go into saving America. That's what I want to talk about. I'm going to get to that because I plan on doing it. But Mercedes, I've breezed through that first segment, and I don't want to miss any thoughts you have.
Well, I have a lot of different thoughts. One, I wish the education system would get a complete overhaul, period, because we're doing school like we did back when we lived on the prairies, right? We're training people to trade their time for money. And at a young age, it's like it was meant for factory workers. And we've moved so beyond that in society. And we're seeing a lot of those jobs replaced by machines right now. Critical thinking isn't taught. Common sense isn't taught. Responsible finances isn't taught. How to interview for jobs isn't taught. But instead, We're here talking about whether teachers can talk to our children about homosexuality or transgender. And it's just the state trying to replace parents, the topics that parents should be talking about. It's very, very strange to even have to have a conversation about this. And really, what I missed saying in the first segment, which kind of goes to this point, is this idea of, I feel like liberals lack common sense. I feel like a lot of times conservatives scratch their head and they're like, what are you talking about? Like, remember when you just talked earlier about the two women that happen to also have penises that were put inside the jail? And like, common sense would say, this probably is not a good idea, or when Psaki the other day, one of the reporters, I think it was a Fox News reporter, said, why are you saying there should be mask mandates on airplanes? But yet we're here in the press room and we don't have to wear masks. What would be different about the airplanes and the CDC guidelines? And she's like, well, I'm not a doctor. And it's like, common sense. We're not wearing masks anywhere anymore, but we got to wear them on the airplanes, which has hospital grade filtration. It's probably the best air you could be breathing. So my point is just common sense, right? And remember the Supreme Court nominee, well, I'm not a doctor. I can't, or what does she say? I'm not a biologist. I can't identify what a woman is. And like, seriously, you could pull anybody off the street and say, hey, how would you identify a woman? I mean, you're going to get from a physical description to a genetic description, right? From XY at a chromosomal level. So anyways, my point is, it's like the left doesn't even have common sense. And I think that's why a lot of times is just moderates or conservatives, you're left scratching your head like, really? You didn't see that coming? You didn't think that was going to happen? Anyways, that's my 2 cents.
Well, okay.
For what it's worth.
No, you're always welcome. And so the idea that they would argue over what definition of common sense is, which is why my point in talking about what's happening in Tarrant County and the battle and the pushback that's happening in the school system, what's happening in Phoenix or in Arizona with the proper representation of the population for voting, and the fact that there is no one coming in from the Republican Party. There's no organization, even no matter how much money you put out there. Nobody cares about that stuff. And what amazes me is that things that are so consequential and so critical and so important end up falling into the lap of patriot citizens. That's my point. It's like, wow, it's up to us to do. And I listened to Gary Greenwald the other night talking to Tucker, and he was saying about how with this TikTok situation. So with this girl's got this lady has this TikTok site, and she's going to be attacked by the left, viciously attacked. And so the story is, if you missed it, and I'll go fast in case you already know it, so you don't have to be fatigued. But the story is this girl puts out this, liberals of TikTok, and it's hilariously interesting because it shows these people that, various people articulating what their beliefs and worldview are as teachers and what they're teaching the kids and this stuff. And she's just putting it out there. But it was so incendiary because people are looking at it. And if they're looking at it, it's considered hate speech. The only thing that's hate speech about it is the fact that it's quoting what they're doing. So she has somebody a journalist, a lady, decides that she's going to dox her, which means she's going to go reveal who she is, where she lives, who her family is, who her kids are, who her parents are, and where they live, where they work, so that the army of irrationals can go assault them, attack them, harass them, interrogate them. And she herself, this chick, goes up to like the girl's parents' place and is at the door, and there's a videotape of her there that they took of her, and she wants to interview the parents to see what they think about the hate speech of like their daughter. And what's the splendid moment of insight is that like 3 weeks earlier, she's interviewed on national television talking about with tears the horrific experiences she's had with people opposing her, and the dangers of losing your anonymity and your freedom, and how cruel and unjust it is for people to be targeted or doxxed or exposed. And then 3 weeks later, she just does it to someone. And this is the part about the left that I think is kind of like, it's worth a psychoanalysis, because they have no problem imposing on you a standard that they themselves don't live by. It's like Antifa that says, or BLM, or campus activists who say, you don't have a right to speak because whatever you say is fascist. Now, they don't know what you're thinking and what you're saying. They just shout you out, you don't have a right to speak. But they want to be heard as they're explaining why you can't be heard. The hypocrisy is, obviously, if you can't let somebody express what they believe, then who's the fascist? If you shut down a person's ability to even defend themselves, who's the fascist? But it doesn't matter. That's the nature of the psychosis. Now, it's something which I believe is solvable. And the way that it's solvable is it has to come to fruition and the nation has to see it for what it is. And that's what's happening now.
Very few people know that my buddy Mike Lindell built his business literally while sleeping in the basement of his sisters. He has a couple of sisters. He was just kind of couch surfing from house to house. He built this incredible business. And early on, remember, Mike's a fairly young Christian, actually. But when he first got saved after coming out of drugs, he would wear this cross. And the producers, like the QVC commercial, they said, "Gay, you got to get rid of the cross." He said, "No, I'm not getting rid of the cross." He had warfare over that cross. This guy was marked like Donald Trump from the beginning to be able to do something significant. Now, he built this incredible company, and you know about that. But I'm serious about this. Mike's products on his MyPillow site are phenomenal. And the one that I love the most is the soft, therapeutic, cushiony, warm, you got firm, suede, imitation suede and solid boot bottom slippers he's got. You could wear these indoors, you could wear these outdoors. And it's my personal favorite because when I put my foot into that, it's like a little slice of heaven. You could sleep with the pillow, but you could walk with a pillow. And I would prefer to walk with the pillow. You want to go to this site right now. This is mypillow.com. And here we go. It's www, like you didn't know that, .mypillow.com. But when you check out, you got to use the promo code Lance because I told Mike I'm going to keep him in business with the slipper sales. You can get, these are the low ones, the low ride in the back, but you can get the high ones. I've got both. I've got a pair for home and a pair for the office. mypillow.com. But don't forget, use the code because you're going to get like 40, 50% off of his stuff, all of it, with Lance. And this is the deal that Mike and I have. And I love this guy because he's a patriot. He's not ashamed of Jesus. And his products just make me feel like I'm walking on a cloud.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world. See you tomorrow.